everyone, and welcome to the Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast of thecinematropolis.com, your home to thoughtful conversations on film. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and today we are reviewing one of the most critically acclaimed and celebrated movies of the year. I know, you're saying, Caleb, I've already listened to your Madam Web review. I know. Hear me out. We're reviewing a movie that might be better, maybe, it's close, Anora, from director Sean Baker. We're going to start with an icebreaker question like we always do before jumping into a spoiler-free review where we'll provide a verdict on the film, and then we'll conclude the show with that in-depth spoiler discussion. Joining me today, he is my co-host, an award-winning Oklahoma filmmaker, and I don't know, are you like my bodyguard? Am I allowed to leave? Can I leave this facility? Laron Chapman's actually my keeper. Laron Chapman, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
Next up, very excited to welcome back. He is a Sean Baker enthusiast. In fact, he just wrapped up his 4-part retrospective on Sean Baker films at the Cinematropolis. He also is a contributor at Flick Attack. Daniel Bokemper. Daniel, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. Better than Madam Web, though. Bold.
It's close. We're gonna. We have to. That's why we're sitting down and talking about this as a group here. We're gonna hash it out.
Yeah. No. Thank you for having me back. Good to be talking about movies with people I like.
Oh, that's cool. Well, speaking of people that we like, anyway, shut up, Daniel. The people we really like, very excited to welcome round out our panel with, firstly, she's an amazing writer, contributor at No Film School, Jo Light. Jo, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I like you, Daniel.
Oh, I appreciate that. Fuck you, Caleb.
I didn't say I didn't like it. I just said you shut up, you know?
True, you're right.
I do love you, Daniel.
I appreciate it. You
like,
too, buddy.
Truth like a friend.
I know. The shut up was with love. I get it. I need to be told that.
Shut up. So love.
Yeah.
I'm really just trying to get at, but before the beard gets out of control, I have to just tell it to stop, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, listeners, if you do enjoy this conversation or any of our past shows, you can help us out. Head over to your preferred podcast app and leave us a rating and review, specifically Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Doing so will help us get discovered by more listeners just like you. Well, let's kick things off, shall we? Let's move on and kick things off with our icebreaker question. So, Anora prominently features members of an Armenian mafia. It's a little ambiguous about whether they're part of an organized mafia or if they just work for someone. But either way, it's very mafia-like in terms of how they operate and communicate. So I thought it might be fun for us to talk about our favorite fictional, and I say fictional, it could be a like historical fiction, so based in reality, or completely fictional, big screen mafia group. So I'm not necessarily talking about it could be a specific individual who runs the group, but I'm more talking about like the organized crime organization. Right. So, Daniel Bokemper, I'll start with you. What is your selection here?
So I have two. The first one, I'm going to bend it a little bit. Mafia movies, they tend to be about pretty affluent white dudes abusing the system and exploiting it and taking advantage of others.
Scarface, argument, done.
True. Yeah, you won. Never mind. I take it all back. So I my first one, I want to go with a mafia that isn't human at all, and that's Futurama's robot mafia, led by the Don Bot, and of course his one of his henchmen, the famous The Clamps, who gives people the clamps.
Oh God.
Whenever they cross him, and then my real pick would be a movie I saw for the first time about 3 years ago, and it's resonated with me as just a mom movie that I thought was very interesting and had a very compelling lead character. And that was Miller's Crossing from Joel Coen, though in 1990, which you would think that would be still a Coen brothers thing, but no, I think it's just Joel Coen. Mostly Gabriel Byrne. His lead is Tom Regan. Involves a couple of this is underselling a little bit, but let's just say a complicated situation with his employer and mob boss, who I just can't, the character's name is Leo. I can't think of who plays him off the top of my head right now. But I would say Miller's Crossing, very interesting, very complex, good character work. And then it has that like sense of motion that you get with a lot of the Coen brothers movies. I think especially of the like Barton Fink Raising Arizona era. There's just this like very, very, everything is moving around you. And it feels like this very kind of larger than life mechanism that's animating the characters, and I don't know, I just really like that in a mob movie. So yeah, I will say the Don Bot from Futurama, or the Robot Mafia, and then for the real answer. Miller's Crossing by Joel Cohen.
Gotta love those Coens, man. They're very good at the Mafia. That takes us to Jo Light. What is your selection for favorite big screen Mafia group?
Does it have to be big screen or can it be TV?
Mine was.
I'll get okay.
That was mine. See, that's what I'm saying. It's hard.
If
Right?
we go into TV, I have a whole new set of answers. But also, throw it out there. Throw it out there.
Just thinking about this film in particular, I went with Barry and NoHo Hank.
Yeah.
Just because the sort of madcap energy is very similar to me, and I love his relationship with Cristobal. It just felt very similar to me, and I just love Barry so much.
Great show. Incredible show from Oklahoma's home, Bill Hader. That's a great choice. I miss NoHo Hank, and maybe one day we'll get a spinoff show. Doubtful.
Oh.
I'd watch it though. Laron Chapman, what is your selection here?
So I've always been fascinated with the inner politics of mafia films. I feel like as a culture we have too, because Martin Scorsese kind of made his whole bread and butter off of these, but he's kind of reconciling with that as well, for himself, about how much of it was he critiquing it, observing it, or actually
celebrating it?
Because a lot of people take the wrong messages from movies. We've seen that in recent years. But I was more interested, one that always resonated with me, it's one of my top 10 favorite movies by the Wachowski siblings, Bound.
Yes.
And this I love because we get the inner workings of the mafia, but it's from the perspective of two very passionate lesbian lovers who meet each other and infiltrate it. And they're kind of living as these women who, are kind of discarded as, ineffectual and really invisible, by all accounts. But because they have been able to be the flies on the wall, they're actually the smartest people in the room, and they're able to very effectively, penetrate this very dangerous mob and to their benefit. And I've always just really loved that movie. Anytime it's on, I'll
wildly underrated. I mean, I think people who've seen it usually are super into it, but it's not a widely enough seen movie, I would argue.
I think if you have any complications with Wachowski films, because a lot of people do, some of the latter ones, I think if you see this one, you can see kind of where that brilliance started, and maybe how it maybe just kind of got bigger and bigger over time. So,
yeah, I think that's a great choice. I related. I'm picking a different Wachowski's pick, which is I like the Merovingian and his army of werewolves and the Matrix Reloaded Revelations. Part of it's all fictional. It's not. Yes, frankly, I do appreciate the Martin Scorsese Coen brothers exploration of like mob that frankly those are better, more realized mobsters. But you know what's fun to watch? A guy you like, I already know all that. Just let him monologue and about whatever, and then he's got werewolf dudes. I mean, come on, like I think it's a very fun mobster. It's again way more about the fun than the examination of said mafia, though. I also really quite like the theatrics of the White Death from Bullet Train. And now Bullet Train, a very okay movie, but I did like the theatricality of how the mafia was basically every mafia member in that movie was an anime character, but in a live action movie. I did appreciate that component of it. Again, I don't know if I'd say favorite mafia, but I had a lot of fun watching that said group. If we're throwing in TV, I mean, I got to go with the Wire, as run by Idris Elba. So good.
Man,
so good.
We still don't talk about The Wire now.
I know. I know. We talk about it at least once a month.
But
at
it's
least
not
it's
enough.
not enough.
Isn't its 20th anniversary? What years is it? 2006?
I think it's actually over 20 years old. I might be wrong. Either way, it's coming up. We're around 20 for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta get my wife to watch
Time
that.
to
We've been talking about watching it for. It's so good. It's so good. If you're feeling especially jaded about politics right now, it's probably going to be somewhat cathartic for you. All right. With that said, those are our picks for favorite fictional mafias. What are yours? You can let us know by hitting us up on Facebook.com/Cinematropolis, Instagram, and fuck you, X Twitter, so not there anymore. So any of those other platforms, Threads, Mark Z is getting our engagements, I guess. Hit us up on those platforms, and or hit us send an email to thecinematropos@gmail.com. Let's jump into our spoiler-free review of Anora.
Yo, did you pick up milk?
Do you see milk in the fridge?
No.
Then I didn't pick up the milk.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Annie. You don't have cash? Let's go to the ATM. Well, we could go chill out in a private room.
I got a kid who wants someone who speaks Russian.
My Russian is terrible. I can't even roll my R's.
No. Я просто хотел тебе предложить. Ты хочешь быть эксклюзивно со мной?
15. Cash up front.
Deal.
Deal.
So according to IMDb, Anora is described as Anora, a young sex worker from Brooklyn, meets and impulsively marries the son of an oligarch. Once the news reaches Russia, her fairy tale is threatened as his parents set out for New York to get the marriage annulled. So, we weren't joking about the critical acclaim of this movie in the intro. This film premiered at Cannes Film Festival on May 21st, 2024, and won the festival's main prize, the Palme d'Or. It is actually, and I didn't realize this, until I started looking at the latest winners. It is the 5th consecutive Palme d'Or winner from Neon specifically. The previous winners being Parasite, Titan, however you want to say it, Triangle of Sadness, and Anatomy of a Fall. By the way, all those are phenomenal movies, and this would make it the 5th for that particular distributor. This film, Anora, was budgeted at $6 million, and as of this recording, and I haven't looked at box office receipts from opening day, but before opening wider, had already made $9.8 million, and then there's it's a slow moving rollout, so it looks like this movie is well on its way to being financially a pretty big success. It is the writer and director of writer-director Sean Baker's 8th film. There's several that I know Daniel Bokemper has been watching, but previously done things like Tangerine, The Florida Project, Red Rocket. This film specifically, I am going to butcher some names. Oh, am I going to butcher some names? The film stars Mikey Madison as Anora, Mark Edelstein as Vanya, Karen Karugalian, I'm sorry, as Toros, and yeah, we'll just leave it there. Some other really talented actors who I'm going
You got
to
those
butcher.
first two. Really
I got the first two.
Those.
All right, so Jo Light, I'll start with you. What did you think of Anora?
Oh my goodness. What a delightful film.
Mm-hmm.
It's been somewhat of a hard week for me. And I just was smiling the whole time, and I was surprised at myself being so delighted and stressed out at the same time while watching this film. It is so tense and comedic at the same time, and there's no air in this movie at all. It's edited exquisitely, and it's just so much funnier than I thought it was going to be, and I was just enamored of Mikey Madison from the opening frames. Like I fell in love with her immediately. She is so stunning in this film. Yeah, I just loved it so much, and I knew that I was probably gonna like it just based on what I'd heard already. But what a surprising little delight of a movie.
Mm-hmm.
I just am still thinking about it, still ruminating on all the little intricacies of the story and how she deals with things that happen to her, and I just love it so much. It's so good.
Love it. Love to feel the joy and celebration movies can bring. And the place where heartbreak feels good. Laron, Chapman, what did you think of this film?
I echo that. I did not think that I could go into a movie theater and escape for 2 hours. I thought my mind was going to be too cluttered with world events. And I was so relieved that I could actually enjoy something and for a couple of hours. And this movie was a nice respite for that. I'm a huge fan of Sean Baker. There's no misses for me at this point. So I agree. I echo the sentiment that I didn't expect it to be this amusing, because a lot of his movies are pretty, I guess the exception of maybe Red Rocket has a lot of humor in it. But for the most part, his movies are very, as Joe mentioned, very tense, very, and sometimes very bleak,
Very intimate too.
Yeah. I think what shines here is he gives his actors the free range to just shine. He lets the camera sit there and allows them to play and explore. You feel like everything is authentic. Everything feels, even in the most absurd situations, these feel like real human human beings, and I think that it just Mikey Madison, who I've a growing profile. Most people know that I'm a Scream fanatic. I don't want to spoiler alert, but she has a
great role in Scream.
Very pivotal role in Scream 5. But this is going to put people's radar on her, I think, for a long time, because this is just a brilliant showcase for her and her supporting cast, I think, too. This movie swings places tonally, and it never feels false. You know what I mean? Even if those tones don't feel like they, connect, the circumstances, and as it unfolds, it makes sense. And so, and there's kind of a couple different movies here. We kind of get
I think so. At least two.
We kind of get a 50-minute, I would say, like indie rom-com kind of vibe, and then we get this kind of madcap middle, screwball comedy midsection, and then a very poignant coda. Dramatic coda that I think. And so, this is a very impressive film. And I think it's going to be one of my favorites of the year.
Very nice. Dan Bokemper?
Yeah. And both Joe and Laron alluded to the editing and how well things are shot. And I think that speaks to it. I'm just going to be frank. It might be my recent Baker bias, but I wouldn't call it recent because I think I've had it since I watched Tangerine in 2014, 2015. I can't recall the exact date when that came out. But I think every, at least recent Sean Baker over the last 10 years, Sean Baker film that I've seen has made me laugh so hard that my stomach is hurt, and has also made me cry. And I think a film to do that and it not feel, it all does feel very real, and it feels very authentic. But then at the same time, shouts out to whoever wrote that synopsis too, using the word fairy tale, because I kept thinking of like, want to use the word, a mythological frame that's placed around these characters, but it is very fairy tale. It's very magical at the same sense, but it's also a very real story. It's not magical realism. There's no element of this that's magical realism. But I think there is this idea of magic, and that your dreams can come true, or that they did come true, and then we, these characters are looking for something bigger, while simultaneously people would usually turn away from them unless they actually need something from them, like their body or something like that. And again, I just think this film is very magical in the way it's framed, but it's also has a deep emotional anchor, and a lot of that does have to do with just like, this is the thing. Sean Baker uses in a lot of his films a lot of untrained actors or people who haven't been in a lot of stuff, yet they all feel very, very real. And there have been other directors.
Even the smallest, minuscule, tertiary characters always have impact.
Yes.
He really builds the world around them to make everything feel like the world that you're living in.
Even characters you see for like maybe total of like 45 seconds.
Like for example, there's a scene in the we won't spoil it. There's a scene in the diner where there's at least one group that there's more engagement, and you're like, those are probably not actors, but they're all like kind of playing into it, and it feels like how if I disrupted someone's dinner in a diner, it feels very true to life. They'd be like saying, go screw yourself, go away.
Exactly. That just feels so very real. But then again, it's beautifully shot, and Sean Baker has remained an editor, and I'm not super familiar with all the technical aspects, but I believe for the majority of his recent films, he still has remained the accredited editor, but he has taken a step back as cinematographer since Tangerine, but I think his influence is still evident. I think Drew Daniels is the cinematographer for this one, but I just really, really loved it. And I think it culminated so nicely. I think all of the emotional moments are earned. I will say it's not really a criticism, but I could see where if you really liked a lot of Sean Baker's other work, this one does do something different in its final act that doesn't really match some of his other stuff. It's a lot more, I think, maybe I don't want to say somber, because I think Tangerine hits that too, but it's a little bit slower. It's a little bit less of an explosion of an ending, maybe, and we sit with that falling action for longer than we normally would, and I think in some instances that could feel a little maybe jarring and a little different, but for me, I just felt like it resonated exceptionally well. So I loved it.
I also, surprised no one, really liked this movie a lot. I think it's, you guys have already said so much. I'm trying to, what new can I add other than the performances are amazing? My guy, Toros, I can't pronounce the actor's name, but that character favorite comedic relief of the year. I like anytime, whenever he shows up in like the beginning of Act 2, I like the phone call. There's a whole phone call, and I was in pain laughing so hard at just like the absurdity of this, what was happening on the screen.
I don't know if that actor, Karin, I'm gonna Corrigan. I messed that up. But either way, he is a Sean Baker regular. If you go on Wikipedia and stuff, you're not gonna find an article around them. But he's been in almost every Sean Baker film.
I know he was the cab driver.
He's a taxi driver.
Yeah.
Major role in Tangerine.
The Armenian taxi driver.
yeah.
in that,
Prince
so.
of Broad.
Yeah, he pops up in Florida Project too.
Florida
I
Project.
didn't know
Yes,
that.
he's Willem Dafoe's boss.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
he's
gotta go back. I gotta go back and watch.
He's apparently in Red Rocket. He's accredited. I don't know if he's maybe either a producer, but I saw it on his IMDb credit, and I'm like, does he show up in this? I couldn't remember where he does. But Prince of Broadway, he has another major role that I think has about as much screen time equivalent as this film here, and very, very excellent. In that one, he plays sort of a criminal, but a different kind of one who's trying to sell, knockoff clothing and stuff like that. But still, just a very impressive actor, and he seems to be just. One of
I mean, he makes the comedy look easy, and a lot of that has to do going back to a lot of comedic act is the acting, but also the editing, and it's just it's a great pair because there's a lot of the humor comes from the editing, the way, especially in that very long intro sequence where he's in the car. Like yes, the whole thing is inherently funny, but the way they edit it is really where I just like. Yeah, it was so funny.
The crosstalk hits so well. Like it's like everyone talking over each other, but nothing seems lost. Like I didn't feel like I felt like disoriented in the way that it was probably trying to make me feel, but at the same time, I don't feel like anything was lost, and I feel like it's very hard to hit that, like that particular vibe.
Yeah, no. So anyway, he was the character I think I enjoyed the most, and I mean, you guys have already all said it. I did not expect this movie to be nearly as. I mean, I knew it would have humor in it. Sean Baker's movies always do have some element, even if they are, I do agree, a lot more intimate and quiet. Usually, you laugh sometimes. There's usually a bit there, but yeah, this was one of the funniest movies I've seen this year. But also, there's some great character work. I think. An area I might differ with you guys like marginally is there is sort of like a coda, and I know what they're going for, and it's working for plenty of people, so this might just be a me thing. It didn't land emotionally the way I thought it would, even though I know what they're doing, and I think what they're doing is actually pretty brilliant. I don't know if it's just because I wanted more character work at the beginning. And what I mean by that, it's hard to talk about without spoiling it. So maybe I'll talk about more in spoilers, but there is an element of, Anora, Annie is only able she doesn't have healthy male relationships. So she doesn't know what it's like to have, like, I don't know how to tell a guy, thank you without, using my body or something. Yeah. And that is an element that, again, I'm not trying to be careful and spoil it, but like the ending is a payoff, a really compelling like realization of that. And I even think like on paper, I'm really down with it. I think it would have landed better had they spent a little more time with that in Act 1. And maybe they did and I just missed it and I got to watch it again. It does not, by the way, ruin the movie, because I actually think what they're doing is really
intentional,
very intentional, very well done. It's all there, like in terms of like setting up some twists and turns. So I don't want to make it sound like the movie is bad or anything, because I think I just was expecting with that the closing moments. I usually expect to feel like that's the emotional climax, and it didn't quite land that way for me. That does not mean that it's a bad moment, and I do not think it like diminishes the movie. I was a little surprised at how cold I was in the final moment. Yeah. And maybe that was just a me thing, frankly.
When we get to spoilers, I have a very similar feeling to you, but I've since sat on it and have kind of been gestating on that, what I felt about it, because I too left feeling a little bit emotionally shortchanged by it. But I then immediately Googled meaning behind this ending. You know? And then literally, apparently Sean Baker did an entire interview about the ending.
Okay, I want to watch that interview.
I wrote down some quotes that he said, and when we get to spoilers, I'll just explain in a paragraph what he intends for that to mean.
I won't say this is firsthand. I have known some people who have worked in the line of work of like stripping, not very closely. And I have also had friends who have worked with like an abuse shelter type things, who've shared that women who live this lifestyle, that is a thing. I'm not an expert on it. I'm not going to pretend. But so I saw that and I was like, that is a really cool, interesting thing you're doing that we definitely don't talk about at all,
Yeah.
like culturally, especially when you're talking about people who are in the line of work of like stripping or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. I want to reiterate. I think that on paper it was all there. Can't wait to talk about it in spoilers. And again, I think this is still an outstanding movie. The last thing I will say in the spoiler-free section, just to kind of like put a pin on some of the ideas that Daniel, I think you were hitting on. The thing I really like about this movie, and frankly, all of Baker's movies to varying degrees, is he sort of is good at taking a common trope or framing device. So in this one, it's a Cinderella story. It's the fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
It is, oh my gosh, I'm a stripper and I just found this guy who's going to sweep me off my feet, give me access to wealth and live the lifestyle I've always dreamed of living. It's a shortcut. I hit the lottery.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think is brilliant about what he's doing here is he's taking those tropes, but applying it to our very real world.
Mm-hmm.
And under what circumstance could that possibly actually happen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, this is the way he came up with the story. It's son of a Russian oligarch. Okay, what would that in our real world? Let's follow that trope out. How would that actually play out realistically?
Mm-hmm.
And I think through that, he's able to sort of like dive in and explore, yes, the tropes, the problems or maybe weaknesses or limitations of those tropes as a storytelling device, while also framing it up to look at the real world that we're living in right now. So you kind of hit on that a little bit, but I wanted to bring it home. I think he does that just from a broader storytelling perspective. Sean Baker is like really doing that super duper well in all of his movies, but in particular, I thought it really landed. Like we all have dreams of like wealth and success, and what would that actually look like? I don't know. So how would you guys compare this to his other films? If I mean, you could rank them. I'm not necessarily doing a ranking, but if you were going to say, hey, this is my third favorite, like, and Daniel, having reviewed a bunch of them, I'll throw it to you first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's the thing is they're all, Laron said it earlier, he does not miss. I really enjoy all of them a lot. I think Tangerine holds a particular place in my heart as a film I've just revisited constantly. It's kind of like how I described the Straight Story a little bit. It's that, I mean, a warm hug of a movie is a wrong way to describe it, but it's more of like a, I don't know, kick in the balls or something. But but welcoming, I guess, and I appreciate that. And I think like one thing he has is these. It sounds kind of grotesque in of itself, but it's like an odyssey of shit shows. It's just kind of a nonstop of everything seeming to go wrong, but then going right and wrong again. And I love that. And that seems to be persistent through a lot of his films, is that that idea. But I think this one is excellent. Maybe in a few years, when I've had more time to process it, like some of these other films, I would, it might occupy the same space. I still think it's excellent. I would be hesitant to call it like my favorite Sean Baker film, but I know that comes down to personal preference, because like if you were to ask me, how good all these films, I would say these are all like necessary viewing. At least, especially his like four most recent, but Red Rocket not being for everyone, I enjoy it for what it is. But I think Anora will continue to do that. And I really hope Anora is, because in a lot of ways, I think it captures so much of what Baker does right. And you described it really well, Caleb. And I think that in turn makes it one of the more accessible entry points to get into
Daniel,
Baker.
In this case, I do agree with you. I think this is a very accessible
movie. Yes,
movie.
thank you. So is Poor Things. Come on.
Assuming, okay, accessible, assuming two things. You're willing to watch a lot of stripping and drugs and language. Yeah, if from a storytelling perspective, though, I think
in terms of getting it,
the tropes and all that, like if I was going to recommend to one of his movies, this would be a good starting point.
Yes,
and I actually think that makes this movie's Academy Awards chances pretty high.
Yeah,
at least for the maybe not wins, but nominations.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Laron, how would you compare this to his other films?
What I love about all of his films is that he extends, empathy and dignity to his characters and the worlds they inhabit without ever judging any of these characters, because they're in environments that for many people are objectable, but he kind of extends this like deeper look at like what is it really like to live this life? What are the day-to-day decisions that these people make, and why did they do these things? And so it's like he kind of dispels the venom from maybe our preconceived notions about these different professions these people are in, or the reasons why they got to those professions, And so I think Tangerine and Red Rocket are kind of merging here tonally for me in terms of if I was going to compare these movies. But I think that I think Anora will probably rise into the top maybe the top two of this over time. It's certainly more watchable to me than say like the Florida Project, which is personally my favorite, the most emotionally resonant one of his movies. But it's also the one that hurts the most for me. So so it's not as much as I want to revisit that feeling. Whereas this has such a wave of different emotions, as Joe mentioned. It's a very delightful film in many ways, so but yeah, I think it's an excellent film, and I think it's one of the more accessible, but not, I don't mean that in the sense that it's lost any power that the other films have. I just think that he found a way to brand his unique way of telling stories and presenting characters, complex characters, in a way that I think will transcend even the people who maybe or otherwise wouldn't watch a Sean Baker movie.
Yeah. Again, if someone said, I've never seen Sean Baker, this is the one you're like, hey, start with this one.
I think you'll like this.
If you like this one, you want to see his other
if you want a deeper dive, there's some other shit.
Joe, what do you think? How would you compare this to some of his others?
I like that everyone's calling this accessible. My screening last night was busy.
Really?
It was full.
Yeah. Nice.
Which surprised me. Like I
love to hear it.
I think there was one group that was not in the right movie, and as soon as it started, they were like, boop boop, gone. But everybody else was there for the whole time.
I will say, for everyone I will say, the first 3 minutes, if you turn it on or uncomfortable, you're gonna know.
Yeah, you are in the wrong film.
Yes,
and I think they were. Like, it wasn't that they weren't happy with what was on the screen. I think they were just in the wrong place.
Movie. Okay,
they're like, there are a lot of boobs right now.
This isn't Terrifier 3.
Yes.
Where's Art?
Where is Ray Fiennes in that road?
Where's the conclave?
All the Catholics. So I do agree. I think this is his most accessible film. I like that he's been given, I think, I didn't look at the budget specifically, but I think this is more expansive, probably more money than he's ever been given. And for me, I think it's the one that I would want to watch again. So I think for me, it would be my favorite of his. I do love Florida Project, and I do love Tangerine, but I think for me, I would rather put this on again. So for me, I think it would be my favorite of his work.
Yeah, no, I think, I love it. It's all down to preference. I think it's tough. I get torn sometimes between what's my favorite, but also the one I watch the most, because I think, Laron, I'm actually pretty much lock sync with you. The Florida Project is probably always going to be the one that like really hit me the hardest emotionally. Yeah. But I think Anora is definitely one I'm gonna watch. Like I got back from the theater. I went by myself. My wife was like, "Yeah, maybe," on the trailer, and I got back and I said, "Okay, we're gonna watch it again, and I think you're really gonna like it." Like, and I'm excited to show that to her and to recommend it to other friends to kind of get their reactions. Whereas I wouldn't necessarily have that sort of enthusiasm for the Florida Project, even though I think overall that's probably my favorite personally. Red Rocket, right there, super rewatchable, recommendable. So, and I do like Tangerine a lot. Red Rocket, I need to give a second shot. I liked it enough, but didn't feel the need compelled to rewatch it. But also, I was not maybe in the right headspace when I watched it the first time because I wasn't laughing enough. And I still have some of his others that I haven't seen yet.
I mean, I have blind spots too. Takeout and Starlet were two I didn't cover in my essays, and
heard a lot about Starlet.
Same.
And it shares some connective tissue with Red Rocket, and also I believe this movie from what I understand about it, but I can't confidently speak to it. I need to watch it, but definitely a huge blind spot for me.
Well, knowing that this budget was $6 million and before it even went wide, it made over around $9 million is very encouraging, especially for what I'm like, okay, well, especially if we get some Oscar buzz, Sean Baker, this might be like the movie that he breaks through a little bit. Not that I want him to make a $100 million Marvel movie, but I mean, like he could have a $20 million budget, you know, maybe something like along those lines, which is a pretty big step for him.
Yeah.
All right, so much to talk about in spoilers. We'll wind down the spoiler-free review section very quickly with our letter grades. I'll start with we'll start with you, Joe, and go around the table.
A+.
Ooh, A+.
Come on with that perfect
score. And we do believe it A+ is at this table.
No, I love it.
Daniel Bokemper?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a man. it's an A, but I don't know why I'm like hesitating from an A plus entirely. I think maybe there's some like minor, there's like minor pacing stuff. I don't know. I will probably, it will probably go to appreciate, but right now I feel like firmly an A is what I'm thinking. Whereas like, which is where I would put like Florida Project, Tangerine being my A plus currently, just because of how easy it is for me to rewatch that film and not get bored by it. But this could end there too. But yeah, regardless, a very excellent, and I think a must see film for the year.
All right, A, I like it. Laron, Chapman, what are you going to give it?
I needed this movie, and I think a lot of people will. I think a lot of other people will too. And so, I don't know if it's my current mental state, but I think that that if this movie can facilitate some joy and some introspection and some empathy towards people who aren't in the best of circumstances and situations and very vulnerable in society, then I think that it's meaningful, and that's a good thing. And so this gets an A for me. And again, I think it's one of my favorite movies this year.
Man, I had a B plus, but you guys have talked me up. I'll go A minus. I do. I know. I really like. Okay, come on. Okay, I'll go. No, but you've talked me up to an A minus because the things that work about it work so well. And Laron, to your point, I think I needed this movie a lot more than I realized, and I especially needed it to be funny, even though I wasn't expecting it to be. So
yeah,
and it gets so much so right. So much so right. So I think it's an A minus. I think it'll probably appreciate. My biggest things were, I found Act One to it complete. This is not a knock. It is completely necessary for you need Act One for me to enjoy Act 2 and 3 as much as I did. I will say I wasn't bored, but I was definitely. I can tell you I super enjoyed Acts 2 and 3 way more than I enjoy Act 1. Mostly because I just thought Vanya was a shithead from the get-go. So, which colored my perception. Sure. Now, it was good stuff, though.
Yeah.
But from a pacing perspective, initial viewing, I was like, once the comedy really kicked in, I was like, all right, let's go. And I was locked in. And then the ending, which we'll talk about more, and I do also think we'll appreciate, because on paper I'm like, I see what we're doing. This is a really cool idea, and I think I just need to let it sit for a while. So A minus, but I do think this is easily in my top 10.
Yeah,
no doubt, maybe top 5.
Yeah.
What else would we recommend people check out? And we'll go back around the table, the opposite direction. Laron, Chapman.
So Baker said this movie was very heavily influenced by a Fellini film called Nights of Cabiria. And I think that, and it's also about a sex worker. And I think that apparently it's one of Fellini's most acclaimed films that I have not seen, surprisingly. So this is as much a recommendation for me as it is for viewers, but it seems that there's a lot of thematic things that kind of cross over here. And so I'm going to recommend that. And then obviously his body of work, because I do think it will inform your, perception of this movie quite a bit, because I think it's kind of a Frankenstein version of everything he's done so far.
He's an interesting director. And we'll talk about in spoilers. He definitely has some ideas that he's constantly attacking from a lot of different angles. So yeah, I think he brings it together nicely here. Daniel Bokemper?
Yeah, I'm going to lean more on a commitment to myself to eventually watch Starlet, because I think that film would pair well with this one from my understanding of it, but also, just because I've seen so much Baker, very fresh on my mind recently. So I am going to recommend Tangerine especially. And I think if it was easy for you to become connected with Anora in this film, I think Red Rocket is kind of it almost challenges you with its protagonist a lot more. And that can be a fun exercise. So yeah, I would say I think probably Tangerine and Red Rocket would be my lean more Tangerine, just because I like it more. If I'm being real, but I think both Tangerine and Red Rocket are two films to kind of look at, and they're both about different kinds of sex workers, but sex workers at the end of the day. And I think Baker, he does a lot to illuminate that industry, and also he himself, I think politically is trying to
destigmatize it,
normalize it, and I believe his speech at Cannes was primarily rooted in this idea of I don't know if it's deregulating sex work is the right word, because it's not really regulated at all, but making it legal and destigmatizing it is accurate.
Probably destigmatizing.
Destigmatizing it, but I mean, he's definitely for the full legalization of it in pretty much every form. But I don't know to what extent. I'm not familiar with that view specifically, but I do know he's very pro sex work is real work, which it is. And I think those two films speak to it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
Red Rocket and Tangerine.
There you go. 2 more Sean Baker recommendations. Jo Light, what would you recommend?
I'm going to keep it light. And I'm going to say What's Up, Doc, a Bogdanovich film from 1972, which is like equally screwball, I think, with a very fun female protagonist in Barbara Streisand. And another thing that I loved was Vegas featuring very heavily in this.
Mhm.
I think that Vegas for me plays into as much of the fantasy of the film
Yeah.
as almost anything else. I love that they go to like this warm place and then back to the cold of New York.
Mhm.
It's kind of like Oz. Like
Yeah,
Vegas is the Oz.
it
of
really
this.
is. And there is a Pam Anderson film that's coming out very
Yes.
soon.
The
The
Last,
Last
Showgirl.
that I am very excited to see,
Ooh.
which
Mhm.
is also set in
Yes.
Vegas.
She's gotten very, very, very marginal Oscar buzz for that, but they're saying it's a very you will see her in a different light because she's in a place in her career, kind of like Demi Moore with The Substance, where this will speak it's as much about their careers as it is about the larger overarching issues that they've faced in them. So,
Wait, this is directed by Coppola,
Mhm.
Gia,
Gia
the
Coppola.
granddaughter of
Yeah.
Francis.
and Jamie Lee Curtis plays her best friend in it. So, yeah.
Very
I didn't
excited.
know this movie existed, and now it's on my radar. Thank you so
You're
much. I'm
welcome.
pumped. So the best form of recommendations is when you're like, I haven't heard of this, and it's coming out. Holy shit! I'm pumped. If I was going to recommend this to mom and dad, I'm not going to recommend this to mom and dad.
Yeah, don't.
But I would pitch. I would say, there's a little movie called Pretty Woman that I think there's a lot of overlap in terms of the setup. Obviously goes in some pretty radically different directions, but in terms of like dude meets prostitute and she's actually awesome person. We're gonna look at like the life of a prostitute, and I'll be here.
I think what you said at the top was that that it kind of recontextualizing the tropes of the rom-com. That is a perfect film that it kind of seems to be deconstructing in a real world context.
Yes.
So
circa 1990.
Yes,
which
yes.
is a very different world than we live in now.
Yes.
But I do think I do still like Pretty Women a lot. I'm also going to go with one more recent, Hustlers. If you want to look at people who are working in strip clubs and how they find their way at exploiting or actually, hold on. If you want to watch a movie about strippers who want to use capitalism as a vehicle to achieve their dreams, that movie also does it and is very fun. And has some great pole dancing. Not that I'm a connoisseur of pole dancing, but I was just like, that movie does a good job at that thing.
Well, it's directed by a woman, so it's like it makes sense that it would have a more tasteful.
I just want to reiterate, I don't go to strip clubs. Just want to make it very clear. But I was like, the action and all the choreography in that movie was very impressive. And I thought the story was a hoot too. And last but certainly not least, I'm recommending this with a huge caveat. We already talked about The Wire, which is what I originally had down, but then it had me thinking about the other show by David Simon, one of his other shows that I really liked that almost no one saw was The Deuce, which is exploring the birth of the porno industry and looking at the business side of that. And also, much like The Wire, how the business side of that is actually a lot more entangled in politics and very seemingly disconnected real world problems that all sort of filter back to the money and the industry, all through some pretty well written characters. I say the caveat is because James Franco is a lead in that show, which might be a non-starter for certain people, but it also has Maggie Gyllenhaal in a great role. Highly recommend that show, The Deuce.
It was on HBO.
HBO Max, yeah. Or sorry, on Max, the one to watch for HBO.
X Max.
All right. Well, there are our recommendations, listeners. If you do not want to be spoiled on Anora, go ahead and tune out now.
Don't spoil the movie!
We love you guys.
Oh my god, thank you! Tell everyone not to spoil the movie! Please! Because we don't want people to know! We love you!
Love you.
Thank you so much!
Can't wait to see it.
They're not gonna spoil, they're not.
All right, so I had two main topics that I wanted to discuss, but I think they're going to take us all in a few different directions. So we'll see how this goes. There's a lot to unpack with this movie. So I would say I want to start with looking at that sort of subversion of the Cinderella love story I talked about, or we talked about in the spoiler-free section here. And the first act of this movie is more or less like that Cinderella love story for Anora, a stripper who connects and hooks up. She connects with the son of a Russian oligarch, and initially, it seems as if she is falling for him, or at the very least, the benefits of the wealthy lifestyle he has. He's got the best parties. He's got money. They can fly to Vegas. But this quickly falls apart once Toros, gets wind that they got married. So, sort of, elaborating further on some things we talked about, full spoilers on the table. How do we feel like this movie uses established tropes from that, like, sort of like cross, wealth gap love story, I would say rich poor love stories, to explore sort of the socioeconomic realities of both characters. And Laron's nodding. I'll throw it to you first.
Yeah, I think it immerses you very quickly in both of these worlds, and I think it establishes a really stark contrast between the benefits and the mechanisms of that exist within that space. Because we see her and she's a delight. She's powerful. She's in the world that she's in, but you understand it comes with a kind of performative nature that has to be transactional, that has to be, but it is where she is dominant, and so when she enters into this other space and she realizes that this guy does literally nothing and he has more than me. You know what I mean? Like, and just that, like,
Apes and plays video games, man.
The question comes up.
Yeah.
It's just like, how do you get all this? Like, what do you do to get all this? And the question is, I do nothing. I'm a beneficiary of this. And so, I think that it shows this contrast between these two worlds in a very effective way. And I think that, it also shows the gross disparity, you know what I mean, of these two worlds, that she's working her ass off for less than what someone is just handed. And and I thought that
having to actually put her body out there to make
literally
money.
Yeah, exactly.
Joe, what do you think about this? How do you think the movie kind of what do you think of the way that it uses it, kind of addresses socioeconomic class differences?
I think it plays very well within that space, but also what I love about the story is that she has so much agency. I don't think there's anything nefarious in what she does the whole film. I don't think that she sets out I'm going to make this guy fall in love with me. I'm going to make sure that he proposes. It's all sort of just consequential. And I think she's very serious, and I don't see her as lovesick or I don't see her as someone who is doing any of this other than seeing it as transactional, like what you were saying. I think she notices things around her. I think she feels very as comfortable as she can in these different spaces. I think she's very smart about the way she behaves. And to me, again, there's nothing underhanded in anything that she does. He proposes to her. She negotiates a rate for that initial week that they spend together. It all sort of just falls in her lap, I think.
Yeah.
Is how I see it. And so to that end, I think that it's not so much she's the Cinderella trying to find her Prince Charming. It just sort of happens, and so she's going to take advantage of it.
Right.
With not in a negative way. It's just she sees an opportunity and she takes it.
Yeah.
And I think that subversion is great. I just love that there's nothing evil about her character or this relationship that happens.
Yeah.
And she's tough. And she's tough in every circumstance that kind of comes her way. You always feel even when she's threatened, even when she holds her own, throughout the whole process. And I admired that she was not some damsel, you know what I mean? That she fought tooth and nail in any space that she was in.
And she's bold. The oligarchs are threatening her, and she's like,
get the fuck out of
"Get out of
here.
here. I'm going to divorce you."
I will fight you.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, exactly. It's like these are intimidating people. Like if any of us were encountered by 3 Armenian thug-looking dudes or people who were clearly like ultra wealthy, threatening to destroy your life, we would all just be like, "Oh,
we
okay."
might cower under the
a
picture.
little bit. You might just shut up." But no, she just is like, "Nope. This is what he married me. This is what we talk." I mean, his decision. I mean, to your point,
Yeah.
he's the one who does all the action. She's just basically wanting him to make good on his decisions.
Yeah. I think that, and you want it for her so much.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that at any point I was like, oh, this is going to work out.
Yeah.
Oh no,
No,
never.
I was like,
never.
this is never going to be good for her, but I still want it for her. And I'm still like desperate for her to get something out of this, if it's not going to be this life with these Russians.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I pulled for her so much. And I think that you can, because again, there's nothing in her actions that are like negative for me, like that she's like.
No, I'm with you.
getting into the relationship.
I never read any of her decisions as like predatory or anything. She's like you said, it's an opportunity. I do think it's somewhat transactional, but we'll talk more about that in a second. But I don't think it's like I'm manipulating you to get this. It's like, hey, this stuff fall in my lap, and all I'm wanting you to do is just do what you say you're going to do. But hey, you married me. I'm your wife now. I need you to tell these people that I'm your wife because you proposed to me.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think the fact that that was never the goal is really important.
Yeah.
Like she's like, I will take this amount of money, I will do this amount of time, and then it just progresses from there.
Yeah. And again, when I say Cinderella story, and one thing you mentioned I want to hit on there, I don't think it's necessary. I say Cinderella story in that she's not looking for Prince Charming, but it is this, all of a sudden this man shows up and it gives me basically unlimited access to all these things
I've never had.
And I've barely been able to imagine, you know. That doesn't mean she's out seeking it or whatever, but it just like lands in her lap as sort of the underdog. So which again goes back to what I was saying earlier, is I love that is a real world application. Like, are there that many women looking for Prince Charming? Actually, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. But like, this feels like a very realistic depiction of how this could, like I said, how this could happen. Daniel, what do you make of sort of some of these socioeconomic ideas on the table?
Yeah, and I think when we talk about the idea of a Cinderella tale, I think it's an appropriate thing to say, but it is more in a way that it gives us a bit of a sort of an outline or a template to work from in terms of some of the things we're seeing. I really like in the first act some of the things we see in terms of the difference between, I keep calling him Yvonne, and
I think he has. I
it's
think
like
he goes
spelled like Ivan.
It's spelled like Ivan, but he goes by Vanya.
Vanya, yeah. But Vanya and Annie, we see those shots of Annie after she, finishes up her shift. She's, covered in jackets and scarves and is really guarded on the subway, and it's all very bleak, and it's all very, it's snowing, and it's very, you mentioned earlier, it being very cold, and that's so good that it does.
Did you get milk?
Right. Her sister.
That's such a powerful little just minute moment about the stark contrast about things, about what they lack and what, and,
yes.
this something as innocuous as that, then she goes to this other space and it's just lavished with whatever beverages you want.
Well, that's what I mean. And it's like, if we pull that Cinderella thread, it's like that the nightclub is kind of the ball, because you have her in this very bleak setting, living on what I presume would be like the edge of poverty with her sister. And then also how, like, I'm not saying her sister isn't uncaring. She does care about her, but we see very little of her sister. And I think that's very deliberate, because when she's leaving after she agrees to, to be Vanya's girlfriend for a week, she's like, I'll be back Tuesday. And her sister's like, Tuesday's a week from now. And she's like, yep, Tuesday. And she leaves. And then, whereas you have Vanya has like literally guys who are not related to him, but are in his, employed by his father, who are like watching every, like, they're trying to monitor him for like as closely as they can, despite him not doing anything. He was sent to the States
to study.
Clearly that didn't work out. And it's all, but yet they're still there. So very concerned with him, and very like, we have to protect him as this, this prized treasure. And again, that the nightclub kind of serves as, I think, the interstice for that, but it also it's like what happens after the ball in Cinderella, and like that's the thing, and it's like because we get the happy ending. I mean, it's in the first act, right? Like almost that.
Well,
like,
that's what I'm saying. That like it's like there's like the trope that's established in Act 1, and we go to Act 2, and it's like and we have the happy ending. And okay, here's the reality.
This isn't real.
None of this was real.
And I kind of like that. I like that in terms of the setup. But yeah, I also think how different they are. And
well, it's a similar thing he does with the Florida Project, for example. It's like Disney World is right there.
Yes, and
the reality is it's right there, but for like thousands of people that can never actually access that. Right?
Yeah.
So it's a similar thing where you're like, there's the magical, there's the story, and then there's the reality. And this movie does a great job, I think, flipping the script on that.
Yeah, they do. And I think Joe's comment about her agency that she maintains is really important, because I also think that's reflected in the Florida Project with Haley, Mooney's mom in that film, and sort of her just, she doesn't do the greatest things ever at the same time, but she's also very, sort of fiercely protective of Mooney at the same time. And I love the ending of that film. I think the last piece of dialogue that's spoken from an adult is a big fuck you to the Child Protective Services that have pretty much descended upon her apartment motel room, as Mooney takes off. And I think that there is some sort of wonder and whimsy to that, and there's a lot of wonder and whimsy to this film, but then there's also sort of the stark and cold reality, and I think that's where the film's ending. We'll talk a little bit, I know you'll mention that more, but I think that to me that coldness works so well, even if it doesn't make me
feel good.
And I think that's something important to think about. But yeah, I don't know, I really like that. Like there's the Prince not so charming, who sees everything as completely inconsequential and sees everything as just things I can have, and he's still a child, whereas you have Anora, who is ultimately the most adult. I think even when she's put in the face of these, his parents, who are like, it's not oligarch, but it's like, what do they do? Early in the film, he jokes about like, oh, I sell drugs, oh, I sell guns, and I'm like, well, that could all be under the umbrella of what his family ultimately does. But I think even then, she's very, just like firm and stern, and it's like, you're not going to push me around. And you don't scare me.
I love how comfortable she is, no matter what space she's in.
Yeah, very confident.
She's like, I got me, no matter what.
Exactly.
I know who I am. I know what I'm about. I know what you people said. The one thing we haven't hit on yet, and I don't think it's necessarily the point of the movie, but like when you're comparing and contrasting the socioeconomics, and actually, I frankly didn't like Vanya from like literally scene one.
Same.
I think so. I was a little hesitant to embrace him and his intentions. Hold on one second. The thing I want to talk about though is he is just as trapped in his world as Anora is trapped in her world. There's this like temporary overlap where their worlds cross. And listen, I think he's worthless. I mean, he literally just sits around, vapes, and plays video games and parties. However, there is a little bit of this that he has parents who are very obviously hyper controlling of what he does. And he can't escape it, which is why there's that heartbreaking moment when he finally has to tell her, no, of course we're going to get divorced. Like, he's like, what did you think was going to happen?
Well, he calls her stupid too. He's like, what are you, stupid? While he's standing on his private jet stairs while she is on the tarmac still. And I think that's also just an interesting image. It's like, he's like, I'm going to talk down to you, but she...
Oh, he's an idiot. I just want to be very clear. I'm not sympathizing with him.
No, I know.
But there is that element of
he's trapped too.
Well, you are trapped. The things that control wealthy are a lot different than the things that control the people without money.
Which in that Cinderella dichotomy, it's very true. The prince feels like shackled by tradition, and we have to do this. This is the order of things, and that's why he likes this person who doesn't have the agency on the other side. It's like, you have everything. Why aren't you happy? It was like, we're both prisoners in our own worlds, in some capacity. So,
all he can do is run away when he's like, oh, mom and dad is coming.
I actually love that he's like missing from a lot of
Oh, trust me. I love that he was gone for like, at least 40 minutes? Oh, man.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, Toros, my guy. I love it when he just starts walking on. Have you seen this guy? Have you seen this guy?
Everybody
so much, because he's like, if I just find him, I'm going to be murdered. Oh my god!
Yeah, he just walked past me.
And like the lengths he goes to, I love it. When he pulls his like SUV off of the tow truck, he's like, I have to go, and he's like trying to like bribe the dude, and the dude is like, oh, this. This is just
So
weird.
funny.
I don't know what's going on. And within 10 seconds, he's ripped his SUV from the tow
He's
truck.
like, oh, I
and
just
he's
started 2 weeks ago, dude. Come on.
Yeah, I know. It's like, I need to run this by my boss. And
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
Oh man, yeah, no. Anyway, the hunt for him was way my favorite. Frankly, my favorite part section of the movie, just because it was chaotic and the comedic relief. But
Yeah.
well, let's talk a little bit more about the relationship, though. We've all sounds like we all agree that there is more transactional in nature. Do we have anything else we want to say about the connection between Anora and Vanya specifically?
I feel like I think it's definitely starts as transactional, and I do think that there's a moment of overlap for both of them, where the ratio for both of it was transactional for him, transactional for her. But I do think there was a moment of divide where there was hope in both of their eyes for a split second that things could be different, things could change, and I think the world around them and the systems that they're in didn't allow it to happen. I do think Vanya was a prick, you know what I mean? But I think that's a product of what he's been in for so long. And I say that I think the ratio of transaction to affection or infatuation or anything like that, just shifted, somewhat there in the middle before completely collapsing, because I do think she started this out like, what can I get from this? And then she started to believe that it could be a good thing for her. And then that was removed from her. So I think that there was a part of her that is devastated that he couldn't be the person that he was claiming to be.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. And I think there's a really specific moment, and I'm about to get a little detailed, I guess. So I want to say before I say it, wow, the intimacy coordinators of this film had a lot of work cut out for them. But done excellently. But I think there is a moment in Vegas, especially, and you mentioned Vegas creates that wonderland where anything is possible. And I think there's a moment there where it's like these people could truly fall in love with one another, or something could work out here. And it's not and it also speaks to I think Anora's control a little bit. And it's not the proposal sequence. I think it's shortly before that where they're having sex, and like
trying to help.
Yes, and like every time they have sex, he's just like this, like, oh, I gotta work is like 100 miles per hour, and then I'm gonna play Xbox now and like go comatose basically while I vape and not say anything. And I think
at one point she was like, "You want to go again? You paid for the full hour," and he's just like, "Nah, dude, I'm playing this video game."
Yeah, no, Call of Duty calls me, and that's the thing. But there's
my
that
duty
moment
has been called
where they're having sex, and she does like tell slow down a little bit. Like this we could actually both
we could have a moment.
We could have
we can connect.
We can
with each
moment,
other
and then
for a
he's
moment.
like, "Oh, you're right," and it's like there is that moment where it's like, "Oh, maybe there is hope," and more often than not, that's not the case, and this film dives into that. But I do think there are those like small, tender moments that really capture, that it is complicated, and it does shift from.
It's almost like it's transactional because it has to be, not because they both need something from the other person, but it's transactional because of the system they're in, and there's just
these little rays of light.
Well, I mean, it's the only the transactional nature of what situation they're both in is the only reason they come together in the first place.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I agree though. I feel like Anora, I have a hard time believing that he actually loved her. Actually, I mean, I don't know. He proposed to her.
I think he's just impulsive. I think it's like if he might have felt it for a moment, but he doesn't cling to any one feeling like for a long time, other than I need to feel good. And if it like makes him feel good, then yeah, he's in love. But then as soon as it's just bores him, or as soon as he realizes he could lose everything because of his family has, really not. Vanya doesn't own anything.
Yeah, I mean,
even his house isn't his. Like it's his
again, I don't. Like I said, I didn't really ever believe he really genuinely loved her that much. But I do think when love is a tough judgment to make. I do think that whenever she was asking him to tell them that he was married and he wasn't doing it, that was where I got the sense of, oh, she really believes in this. Like, I don't know if love is the right, maybe it is, but like, I don't know if it was quite love, but she was like, we're married. I'm your wife. I claim you. You claim me. We're in this together. And like, there was this whole sense of like, I really want to make this work. Let's tell people what we did. And that's that's the moment where I feel like for her, I'm like, oh, there's this genuine, there's like, you believe in something that's real right now. And he does not have that same belief.
He left, but he's going to get help. We're going to find him, and you're going to see that he's going to make good on what he said to me.
If I could just talk to him, and he'll come around.
Oh, he's sober. We'll wait till he's sober, and we'll talk to him, and then it'll be clear.
Totally not going to run back to the strip club and just find
another
whoever
one.
he can.
Yeah.
The worst person.
Joe, what did you make of their relationship?
I mean, there's not really anything more I can probably add to that other than, like I said, I think they both wanted something and they found it in each other. He wants to stay in the States. She would like a little bit more stability. I think there were moments where they did try to connect, like Daniel said. But it's just so superficial that it was never going to work. And I think the moment that he realized he wasn't going to get what he wanted out of the situation and his parents were coming, it just all fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's why he ran.
Yeah. Literally ran.
Ran out.
Yes. Well, luckily for us, that's not the end of the story because the film does kind of a double twist, if you will. So let's dive into that. I'm talking specifically about presenting Igor as a potential romantic interest, as a stand-in to sort of subvert. Oh, you thought this was Prince Charming, but what you really needed was a guy like this. Oh, wait. Then it flips the script again and says, but no, he is not in it for romantic love. He is there to comfort. And I'm speaking specifically about how Igor is present throughout the film, and he's constantly making these nice gestures, giving her the scarf. There's all those cutaway shots of when they were fighting. He's just sitting there being like, what? Even after he found out that they got married, he's like, oh, congratulations. Just like these awkward. So clearly seems like a very decent person, working for the Armenian Russian oligarch. But I thought the movie does an interesting thing where I assumed it was going to land on, oh, I see, he was there all along. And it doesn't do that, which I think is great, which is, no. The point is you don't actually need, you need someone who's just there to comfort you, to love you for you. There's no physical, it's not about the transaction. It's a person who just cares about you because you're a person. Whether or not he was ever actually interested in her romantically, I want to talk about that a little bit with you guys. But it seems to me that his intention was, you deserve to be loved. And by that, I don't mean sex. Like, I see you. I see Igor says, I see you in this situation. And I'm also telling you, you don't want to be a part of this family. So anyway, I'll kick it over. And Joe, I'll throw this to you to kick it off. What did you make of sort of this, the ending of this film and how in Igor's role sort of throughout the film?
I have to say I don't see him as that at all. I see him as serving to sort of give us a little bit more of that like socioeconomic disparity. To me, he serves the point of she now finds herself in a slightly elevated position of power, whereas he's just a goon. And they have those moments where he does see her, I think, that are very important. But I think that serves her more than anything just to show that she's not necessarily in the position that she thinks she is. Like there's sort of like this power struggle between them the whole time where she is talking down to him, cussing him out, calling him some not so nice things, and trying to assert, I think, that elevated status that she just doesn't have. And I think that the contrast that you see between this Russian family and then her situation and his situation with like his car being his grandma's or like living in those apartments in New York, like you see where he comes from and it's very similar to where she comes from. And I think that is more so what he's serving in the story, is just to show this is the person that you are more like, not this other Russian oligarch. To me, it's not romantic at all. Like it's more so, I don't see it as a twist. I think it's very like well planted the whole time that they're equals, even though she's trying not to be an equal.
Yeah, and they are, and they're both in a way employed for their bodies. For Anora, it's the physical, for sex essentially, and the physical intimacy and stuff. And for calling him Igor a goon, he is. He's the muscle. He's the one like, well, we need to bring you in case his friends are there. Vanya's friends are there, and I need you to rough him up. And then we do get to see him have a violent, but he does that candy shot, which we could talk about the candy shop for a moment. That had me
when he
rolling.
breaks everything. Oh my gosh.
Well, and then the owner is like,
Yeah.
y'all smoking dope in my shop again? And they're like, yeah, old man.
Did you
And
let
he's
that
like,
did you let that cutaway and zoomed? And he's like, what happened?
He's not staring at the camera. It's just, it's like,
To me, he's like someone who knows his place.
Yeah.
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 And she does too, but like I think she's trying to escape that.
But she wants to escape it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas he's been sort of he's just beaten down to the point where it's complacency. But at the same time, he does, kind of want to, I think in the attempting to stick up for her a little bit, stick up for herself. I think that moment when they're which again, the return to Vegas, and then they just go into this completely overwhelmed, caught off guard attorney who's just like trying to like execute their annulment as fast as possible, and they're like treating her like shit and throwing their pens at her and stuff like that, and she's trying to be really nice and professional, and then he tells Vanya's parents to apologize. Like, I think your son, or well, not them to apologize, but your son owes them apology. And she's very quickly like, oh, my son doesn't owe anyone an apology. We don't have to apologize to anybody. Yeah. And I think it's just like, that is the moment where it's like, it's not.
But the comeback, that exchange, the comeback there was so good though.
Oh yeah, and why your son doesn't apologize.
I mean, I think that he's enamored with her the same way I am, just because she's like such a strong person.
Right.
Like, I think that he like admires her,
and she's not afraid of them either. Like that's the thing. It's like not, and I'm glad that it shows them being these scary sort of. And first, we don't see his Vanya's parents for so long, and they are just this like sort of albatross looming in this like dark cloud. And then when they come in, they set them up as kind of scary. Again, I've been watching a lot of Succession, so this is very, very Logan Roy-esque, and his dad. And then his mom is she's the one who's like, I will ruin your life. I will destroy your family. I will destroy your friends and all of this. And it's like, yeah, that's scary. But like the part of Anora is like, what the fuck are you going to destroy?
Right.
Like $3,500 maybe worth of stuff. I don't know, probably even less. And it's like, fuck you. And I love that. Like, I think that's really powerful. But at the same time, I think Igor kind of sees that. And I think that's what brings them together. But yeah, to call it.
I just want to be clear. I don't think it's romantic. I think it is. Playing it there is a trope set up where it easily could have gone that direction.
Yeah, there is.
And I'm saying it did not go that direction.
No, it did, despite even having the final sequences like, they're making out in the rain moment or whatever. That
exactly.
But it's cold and it's clinical and sobering. It's not that, and it's sobering. And I think that works really well. But yeah, I see them similar, but not. It's not like they're just like star-crossed lovers who happen to be in this situation. I like that.
For me, the ending, it's like, I think that's her realization that we are equals.
Yeah.
To me, it was just pure emotional catharsis of, I've been through the craziest 24 hours of my life.
She's been fighting it the whole time,
and
the reality of it.
And seeing, I think, him be so constant for her and seeing her and knowing her in a way I think that the other characters don't facilitates that connection. I don't think, again, that it's romantic. I think that this is a moment that I can control. I've had a crazy week or whatever, and I'm going to exert that control by using my body. Like, to me, it's pure catharsis and control. Yeah. And can I do anything in this situation that I know that I can like have full control over?
See, I was reading it as, and I don't think you're wrong, and I don't think there's like even like a right or wrong read on it. I was reading it more as, because he gives her the ring, and it was like, hey, don't tell Toros. It was like my read on it was the realization that, this guy's been really nice to me. I don't think she's ever. I just want to be very clear. I never thought she was in love with him as much as I felt like the way it's structured seems to set up that there could be a connection there. But it was more like her going back to the car and trying to, have sex with him was more like her way of trying to say thank you, because she doesn't know how to do that without her body.
Yeah.
So I think, but I think Joe, the way you present it, I mean, it makes good sense. It also, for her, I mean, control is a big thing. So I think it's just as valid a reading. So I'm glad you brought that to the table.
Well, it seems like everyone sees what they can get from her, and Igor sees who she is. And I think that it took her a minute to really sit with that, until they were in that intimate moment in the car. But but there's also that sobering moment of who I am also comes with all of these challenges that I've been trying to fight myself out of. And so I think, as you mentioned, emotional catharsis, just a realization that this is the reality, and that quick get rich, scheme that presented itself is just that. It's an illusion. And something that Sean Baker did say, that she does have a lot of wins, kind of little wins along the way. So that obviously she attains Igor's empathy, the annulment money, and yes, very poignantly, the wedding ring, I think, is the most
probably worth more than $10,000.
More than
I say she's walking away with upwards of, not that this matters, but $30,000. I think when I was starting to tally everything he paid for her, I'm like, it's a lot of money.
But is this perhaps what Baker wants to challenge, is our own naivety, and how movies have conditioned us to expect that romantic finale,
right?
Even if we know in real life that it just very rarely happens that way. And so that's the subversion of the Cinderella trope here, where very easily this movie, in a lesser movie or a lesser decision in this movie, would have made them have this warm, intimate thing where everything's going to be okay and now I got you. But that's just also, that's not really realistic too. So it's just kind of, it's that settling in of it. We get the idyllic fantasy version, in the Florida Project, that imagining of going to Disney World together, but it's not going to happen for us. You know what I mean? And that's just it kind of seems to be the gut punch ending he likes to put in his movies at the very end. Is he gives us the La La Land. He gives us the happy ending and the real ending in the same space. But
I think it's a great ending, though. I do like that it ends with them in the embrace. It did leave me cold, I would say. I don't think it ruins the movie. I need to recalibrate and watch it again, if I'm being honest, because I was expecting it to feel like the emotional sort of like climax, whereas I felt like it was like more like either it should have ended 10 minutes sooner or 5 minutes later. But that's how it felt. I don't think that means it's bad. I actually think I'm probably gonna like it more now that I have released myself and understand exactly what he's doing there.
It seems like he leaves you in the middle of the healing process,
right?
Not where she's healed, but where she's on the process of that,
right?
And so we don't actually know. It's very ambiguous to know whether she'll be better or worse. You know? We're not given that definitive conclusion in that sense, and so that makes us wrestle with it. It's like, is this poor woman,
how am I supposed to feel about this?
How am I supposed to feel about this? Good, bad, somewhere in between.
Yeah. I think it's great, though. I do think it's a good ending. Like I said, it's less about the storytelling, more about my expectations and how it landed with me. And I don't know, Joe, your read of the ending is even making me rethink sort of my criticism in the spoiler-free section. So I mean, I think this is a really outstanding ending. Either way, we're having a conversation about it, so clearly there's enough there for us to let's split hairs, let's kind of come at it and think about it a little more. I do want to move on to our next topic here, though, which is more broad to the director's filmography, and or at least one of the things that sticks out to me when I think of Sean Baker films is he's really spent his entire career telling the stories of marginalized groups of people across race, gender, geographic lines here in America. Daniel, you and I have talked about this quite a bit off air as you've been working on your series. Usually the main characters are using the tools at their disposal to attempt to achieve their idealized life. And again, these are people who don't really have a lot of tools at their disposal to do that. And I think this exploration continues in Anora. Again, Annie uses stripping as a means to make money and attempt to live a better life. And when she believes she's won the lottery, a guy will bankroll her wildest dreams. Right. So, Daniel, I want to throw it to you first, just because you have recently watched a lot of Sean Baker's movies. You wrote for 4 great analysis pieces over at the cinematropolis.com. Listeners, you should check those out. So Daniel, having just watched several of those films, though, how would you compare how his film tackles that ideal in this film to some of his previous works?
Well, yeah, it feels like a bit of a culmination, and we actually get to see the it's like the rags to riches and back again, where mostly we get, Red Rocket has an attempt at going back again, but at the same time, I think what's true for a lot of his films is he's so good, and I guess it's a trope, but I think the way he weaves it in is very real and still just always is a solid hook, is that these people are vying for something more and they're placed against so many things that work against them, and they're using the limited tools at their disposal. I think of Cinderella in Tangerine, who she's like, I was in a prison for a month, I just got out, and now I have my fiance I need to go find. And like, your fiance, he's just a pimp who just uses and exploits people, and he's already has a new girlfriend, and she's like, what the fuck? And then starts that whole movie. And I will say, people who love, and Caleb, you mentioned how much you like the kind of the second act, the sort of the 40 to 50 minutes where Vanya is out of the picture and it's Toros and him leading the chase for her. I feel like that's like almost Tangerine in its entirety is a lot of that kind of energy.
That chase,
not exclusive. You do have like tender and moments. There's a moment with the car wash that's I really love in that film, that sort of reprieves from that, so it has more room to breathe. But it is that constant chase, and really Red Rocket, and even parts of the Florida Project is like speaks to like a hope for something more, and they're all just doing what they can. And Florida Project, Haley's case, she's selling knockoff cologne in the parking lot of a Disney World, whereas in Cinderella, it's like, I'm just going to find this person. I have $20 to my name. I don't give a fuck what's going to happen afterwards, but I am going to find this Chester, I think is the guy's character's name. Yeah, and we're going to make things right. I don't know. I think that chase is really well done, and I think it's framed, but I think this is almost a logical step forward in that we never really get to see the fleeting fortune. We just get to know about it really in a lot of Sean Baker's films. In Red Rocket, it was Simon Rex's character, Mikey Saber, his previous, career in the adult film industry that he's just trying to just get back into as hard as he possibly can. And so I think it's important that this film takes a step forward and shows us that. But then at the same time, we get the falling action that even when you get this, it's fleeting. It may not stay. And I don't know. I find that very heartbreaking and very devastating, but also very, very real. It just resonates with me. And I think it's always, you always want the best for him. Even in Red Rocket, it's like there's a part that's like, God, this guy is gross and a sleazebag, but you kind of start to buy into his fantasy, like this chase for glory that he's going after. And I don't know. I just think Sean Baker is so good at getting us to get behind certain characters, sometimes without trying much. But I'm always impressed when you have that kind of rough exterior, the people you would otherwise find objectable or stay away from, and then suddenly you get to see what they are, and you get to see it in a realistic sense and how it would pan out, even if it is something as spontaneous as like, oh, well, I happen to be the one dancer here that can speak Russian, and that seems to be what this Vanya needs in order to feel comfortable and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think it is a bit of a culmination. Again, maybe not my favorite of his right now, but I do feel like it's like, man, if I'm going to tell people want to tell people what a Sean Baker film is and what it means, it's hard not to recommend Anora as that movie, because it does so many things right. But then it's also a step in a direction for the director that I think I feel he hits really well. But at the same time, it does have a coldness that challenges us and subverts a lot of our expectations.
There's also a scope here that feels different from the other ones. Like we're still dealing with people in the fringes and the margins, but the film itself feels bigger and vast in the way it's telling the same stories and dealing with the same tropes. But
well, he's often rooted in regional. Part of the reason I wanted to write the series and the reason I picked the films I did was because how specific they are to the region in which they take place. They're all kind of on these 4 different corners of the continental United States. And this film returns back to New York for, Prince of Broadway and Takeout, both take place there, but then it goes to a place we've never seen before in his films, which is Las Vegas. And I think the fact that helps make it bigger is like, oh, people are actually traveling in this movie. Right. This is new for a Baker film. But it doesn't break the connection to the setting. And Joe got at it really good. It was like what Vegas needed to serve was what Vegas is. Everyone always says when they go to Vegas, it's like, if you go for more than 3 days, it's going to get real, it's going to start to really drain you.
Having done that recently, yes, it is in fact very draining after 48 hours.
And I feel like this movie is like, we're going to get just 15 to 20 minutes of Vegas total. And then we're going to come well, maybe not total. We'll get like maybe 15 minutes of it, maybe even like 10 minutes.
It's not. I'd say it's closer to 10.
It's short, but then when we come back, it's like, okay, we're going to this like dingy office, and we're getting the not the underside of Vegas, but we're not going to the Strip.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not going to go where all the pretty LED lights in the dome is.
Not going to the Sphere?
We're not the Sphere. Excuse me. Yeah, we're going to we're going to go to a really cheap attorney's office, and that's it. And I don't know. I think that's also telling, and the fact that he can do that in a very quick period of life, it makes me want to see a Sean Baker television series that's kind of hopping around. Go
watch
the
David
country.
Simon TV shows because they're very similar.
Right. Yeah.
I'm serious. He, like the really grounded, anyway.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Rewatch The Wire. That's
and watch if you can get put with James
Really,
Franco.
this whole podcast
the
is just
Deuce.
to tell everyone to go back.
Watch The Wire. And David Simon. Could also be The Deuce. It could be, he did another one that was really good. That was about Louisiana. Oh, shucks, I'm totally drawing a blank on it. But yeah. Watch David Simon, any of his stuff.
That's all I meant to say.
Yeah. Or just The Wire. Just The Wire. Yeah. Well, Laron, I want to turn back to you. We start to wrap up. I mean, how do you think Baker really uses these character focused stories to sort of provide those fresh perspectives? We've already talked about, and Daniel hit on this a lot. But I just wanted to see, is there like anything you would add to that about how Baker is able to sort of like kind of give you this portal into a lifestyle and a type of person we wouldn't normally access to also explore these like really big ideas?
Yeah, it seems like by not judging his characters, by, again, as I mentioned before, destigmatizing kind of the kind of unsavory or seedy spaces that they might inhabit, but it gives you the how, why, and how these people navigate and hold their heads up high and still are human beings in those spaces. And I think that it's important to see it that way, because normally these characters are in the fringes of movies and they're just demonized, and we just see them as one thing, and we never get to explore what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. We just hear people's perceptions of them. And so by anchoring those people and making them complex, three-dimensional, flawed human beings who make mistakes, who do bad things, who do good things, but all have the same hopes and aspirations as the other characters, it just really illuminates that, we all share this space and we all have the same issues, but we don't all have the same access to about how to survive in those conditions. And if you are in this scenario, this is what that looks like, and so we might not look down upon, why these people make the choices for themselves. Again, why we live in a world where I think we should allow people the freedom and agency to make choices for their own lived circumstances. But some people decide that they know best for you, and I think that this movie is a good referendum on that idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Joe, anything you want to add to just sort of how we see Sean Baker tell these really character-focused stories?
Yeah, I just think that he does such a good job of just dropping you in and putting you with the characters. I think, Daniel, you mentioned like the crosstalk. I think that it's so natural in the way that people talk to each other and behave that it all just feels like you're just embraced by the world, and it's not like this other perspective coming in and stylizing things. It's just all so natural in storytelling and developing these characters that I just feel like there's hopefully no other thing you can do but sympathize with them.
Yeah.
So I just love that he does that in all of his work. It's just, you just feel like you're there with them immediately. Like I put on Florida Project again this morning, and I was just like, you're there, you live there, you're with these families. So it doesn't seem like it would be that hard, but it is, because so many people cannot do that.
Yeah.
It's really hard, though. It feels like it's very similar to The Wire in that you're like, am I watching a TV show? Am I watching a movie? Or is this just like a camera following these people around?
Yeah.
Because he's able to get that naturalism out so well that, the crosstalk, the way that he shoots every different location he's in, you feel like it's a character itself, like I know what the outside of Disneyland looks like, or Disney World feels like, and it's shitty, or in this case you're sitting in Brooklyn and it's like, oh, some of this is pretty cool, most of this is really gross, it's so I think it's saying using a place really well, and the characters all feel so natural and grounded. It all feels like it could have happened almost. Yeah. Well, anything else you guys want to add before we wrap up this talk about Anora? Go see it.
Yeah.
Please go see it. Help it make lots of money so we get more Sean Baker.
Do we think that she's going to get nominated?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
I think she's in contention to win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's at least if she's not one, she's number 2.
I was trying to think of what that category would look like last night. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure but I sure hope she's in there.
I think the Oscars, the Oscars this year are going to be a whole toss-up, guys.
I think unequivocally that she's one or two here. I think we might see. For sure, I think Angelina Jolie has been in a big conversation. What is it? The magazine right over there. Carla Garcia Gascon from Emilia Perez is definitely going to be in there. But yeah, so it's in yeah. But I think this one is like the lock that I would bet money on versus some of the others. So. But yeah, I think Mikey Madison, which is great. 'Cause she's super young.
Mm-hmm.
She's very new to this.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that's working against her is just that.
I would argue the Oscars could use some new blood.
Yeah.
In terms of like who's winning awards and whatnot. I think this movie I think she's going to get nominated. Sean Baker could get a director nom. I feel like of all the movies he's made, and given like how things are shaping up this year in terms of like Oscar contenders, there's not any clear front runners.
No.
So I could just as likely be wrong. But like this is similar to like this has been a pretty consistent film throughout the year that stayed in the conversation, and now they're doing the slow rollout. Leading into the voting season. I mean, I feel like it's got the momentum. Like directing, maybe screenplay, maybe editing. Definitely actress though, no doubt.
Maybe a little bit of an aside. I know Willem Dafoe was nominated for the Florida Project. He did not win.
Yeah, right.
But was the Florida Project nominated for Best Picture?
No,
that was the only nomination.
That was the only nomination. Okay.
It was kind of sad. I remember I was very angry.
Yeah, and it's also because it's like
yeah.
It was after that, and they had
so many more things going for that film.
Willem
He's a great
Dafoe.
man, but that's
Willem
not the
Dafoe.
takeaway.
Listen, guys, Willem Dafoe is going to be that. He should have won 10 Oscars by now.
Yeah,
let's be honest.
Yeah.
Maybe Nosferatu will do it.
He still's got Nosferatu.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, oh man, I saw the newest trailer in front of actually Heretic last night. Again, talk about that on our next episode. But Nosferatu, man, it looks better and better with everything I see. I'm
Perfect
hyped
for the holiday season.
Oh, I know.
I want to bring I want to try and talk my siblings into going to see it.
Go see a good Christmas movie.
Yeah.
Vampires, blood, and guts.
It's gonna be that or that Bob Dylan biopic starring Timothée Chalamet. It's to my surprise, my wife is advocating for Nosferatu over that. I'm like, yeah, me too. You just gotta get your mom on board. All right, well, listeners, thank you so much for tuning into our review of Anora. And hey, thanks to this amazing table of panelists joining us today. Jo Light, thanks for carving some time out of your Saturday morning. Where can people follow you online?
Ooh, I usually say Letterboxd. I'll say that again. Jojo Binks 1. I am still writing for No Film School, but I've also started writing for Final Draft.
Ooh, nice.
Their blog. So I'm doing a lot of interviews over there.
Very cool.
Also back at the Gazette. Yay. We're back. So
We're so
welcome back. We are so back.
Doing the good work.
Yeah, writing a lot, staying busy. Appreciate being here.
Yeah. Oklahoma Gazette, all the places, Jo Light. Daniel Bokemper, also Oklahoma Gazette.
Yeah.
Well, where can we follow you?
Yeah. I feel like I get worse and worse at social media every month, and that I just forget that to use it. But you can.
Do you
find me.
Do you forget?
It's a conscious try. I mean, I like to say I do, but it's like I choose not to remember.
You're a healthier, happier person than I am.
I don't know. I don't know if I am, because it still pisses me off when I get on it, especially this past week. So with that, I would say find me at the Cinematropolis. Check out those 4 essays. They're a light look. I'm not going to say they're like the deepest of deep dives. It's more of emotional impressions, but I do think I captured what I tend to like most about each of those Baker films in them. So please give those a read.
And those movies, just real quick for a reference.
Oh yeah. Prince of Broadway, Tangerine, The Florida Project, and Red Rocket are the 4 I covered. The blind spots, and he's worked on other stuff, but I really, in writing those films, because I kind of wanted to pick one of each, of each kind of major setting, to the point where I actually, missed, or at least didn't cover in this series, Starlet and Takeout. The latter being in New York, the former being another, I think Los Angeles base. It's California for sure, but I'm pretty sure it's LA. But yeah, either way, catch those films out and catch me on Flick Attack. I did a review of Terrifier 3 not long ago. We're talking about Christmas films. That one's there. Yeah, fun for the whole family. And then some other films, The Devil's Bath, a lot of horror.
family?
Yeah. right.
There you go.
The people who wound up in Joe's screening of Anora.
I respect that. I respect that.
They was like, this is not. But yeah, just a lot of horror films there. I mean, we just got past October, and horror has been cool this year. I feel like it's
interesting.
It's been interesting. A lot of swings, a lot of pretty big swings.
So for horror opinions, flickattack.com.
Yeah, primarily for cinema.
Mm-hmm.
The Cinematropolis, I guess. And then, of course, Oklahoma Gazette for things that have nothing to do with films.
Traitor! No, I'm just joking. I'm pretty sure it's a very competitive to write for movies over there. All right. Well, Daniel, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your contributions with the Sean Baker series. Laron Chapman, recently inducted member of the Oklahoma Film Critics Circle.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
One of us. One of us.
Hey. I know we did this on the last episode, but I'm doing it every episode for the rest of the year.
Listen, you can gas me up as much as you would like.
Where can people find you?
They can find me on the Cinematropolis, my film column, Real Insights with Laron Chapman. I promise to rev up that a little bit more. I've been writing has been really hard lately, but I think I'm finally motivated to start saying some things. So
say them loud.
There will be some recommendations, yes, in the coming weeks, and also we're kind of amping up our continuing programming for Dead Center. We do year-round programming for the film festival in Oklahoma City. We have an annual one that we do every Christmas that I'd like to give a shout out to, December 13th, Friday the 13th.
Yes.
In December, we always do an LGBT focused, free to the public screening, because a lot of people in those communities do not have family that are supportive and during the holidays, and it's a really dark time for them. So we try to provide a free and safe space where they can come and be around community, celebrate the holiday if they so choose. We normally have a pre-show, and then we screen an LGBT-focused movie that's normally centered around Christmas. And very appropriately, we're going to be showing Tangerine because it is a Christmas movie.
Yeah, it is. Let's keep that Sean Baker energy going. Yeah, great pick, man. Okay, I actually am gonna make it outside because I've never seen that one on the big screen.
Okay, very cool.
Only it was on Netflix, I think, when it came out. Yeah,
at the Rodeo Cinema Stockyards for people who are listening that are local to Oklahoma City region.
Yes. So Friday the 13th, Oklahoma City Stockyards Rodeo Cinema. Check it out. And of course, you can find me on all the, well, actually not no longer. I think I officially decided I'm killing my ex account. But you can find me on Instagram, Facebook. Honestly, Letterboxd is the place. I'd really appreciate any follows there. C Masters Talk. That's letter C Masters Talk. But you could also just go to thecinematropolis.com, give our channels a follow, and read some of our articles. Leave a comment, hit us up, send us an email, thecinematropolis@gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. We'll catch you again next time when our faith is challenged in our review of Heretic. That's coming next week. It's going to be a conversation, that's for sure.